This video is going to be controversial because I'm about to make a provocative statement, and that is this. Social interaction is a vice, and most of the suffering that we receive was optional, and we are therefore at fault because with an act of our own volition, we elect to surround ourselves with the very people that cause us to feel agony when we could do otherwise and be asocial and be in isolation. Let me give you an example. When I am alone, I feel at peace for no other reason than the fact that I am in a state of at-one-ment with silence and stillness. But when I fraternize, usually not because I want to, but because I have to, be in the world that's populated with people, I find that there is no more stillness and there is no more quietude, and therefore my equanimity is disrupted and I am in a state of disturbance. So, I am happy so long as I am alone. But when I am accompanied by humankind, I can never be happy on account that it is impossible for me to be alone if I am not so. So, what do I mean by this? What I mean is, if I am to be completely honest, when I interact with people, all of the verbiage that comes out of their mouth is nothing useful. It's almost entirely either unnecessary or downright negative, where people use being the gregarious animals that they are, they use fraternizing as a means of stimulation, where it's not about speaking valuable truth, but it's more about psychological excitation. And this is why you have people who gossip just for fun, or they talk about current events just for fun, or they'll downright become antagonistic towards somebody that they disagree with. They become debate-inducing, and this is why I don't like Discord servers, or even listening to live conversations where there's a plethora of guests on, let's say, a YouTube live stream. And that is because people talk about current events, they gossip, and they debate people and become antagonistic to those to whom they disagree with. And why it is a vice is because they deliberately put themselves in joyful agitation. That's what gossiping is. That's what your emotional outpouring of putting all of your woes onto the world is. It is joyful agitation. there is a sort of animalistic vitality that comes with, say, hanging out with your guy friends and, talking about all of the sexual encounters that you performed with your partner, or making lustful comments in regards to the flesh of the opposite sex and saying things like, oh my God, would you look at that ass? How I'd like to just put my face between her legs and never come up for air. See, nothing that was said throughout any social expenditure was anything that made you better. In fact, you are all the worse because of it. It's usually just that kind of joyful agitation, or it is excitation, where socialization becomes nothing more than a mental stimulant that is no different than mindlessly scrolling brain rot content. That's what we do with our promiscuous social interactions. We are basically mindlessly scrolling brain rot content, except we do it through language. We do it through saying things that have no value. And I'm not innocent in this, because when I'm forced to interact with people in group settings, what else is there to do but complain about our lives or listen to other people complain about their lives? What is there to do but gossip about the people we don't like, or bring the conversation towards something sexual in regards to talking about your partner behind her back by kissing and telling? And I ask myself, whenever, I go out into the living room and there's a congregation of people, or I'm invited to watch the ball game, and I just do so because, I don't necessarily want to be a stranger and excommunicate myself to my own family, so I do so out of not wanting to feel guilty. But when I interact with people, I find that it is nothing more than exciting stimuli that tries to exhilarate ourselves through the emotional stimulation of talking about things that are not spiritual, that are not truthful, and really downright meaningless. Not to mention small talk. What value is there in small talk? What value is it when it comes to, quote, catching up with other people? They're not saying of anything that is important to your betterment. In fact, they're just putting on a facade through their false persona, giving you a version of their life that is not ultimately honest with who they really are, what they really do, and how they really feel. Unfortunately, conversations are typically related towards combativeness, towards lust, or towards talking about current events. And again, we do so because we have a insidious yet morbid sense of excitation when it comes to that joyful agitation that I spoke about earlier. If you really feel into the emotionality of what is being said when you're forced to interact with people, all of which is negative, none of which is positive. It's either slanderous, lustful, or some other quality that cannot possibly be described as good. It therefore must be described as bad. And of course, if you're the type of person that wants to try to embody that same stillness and quiescence that you feel when you are at peace, when you are isolated, and you try to extend that into a social setting, people are going to look at you as an awkward, mute, suspicious weirdo. And they're going to be like, why does he just sit there and nod his head and never say anything? That guy gives me, quote, weird vibes. Or, that guy is quiet. As if being quiet is somehow something negative. No, it's because they want you to engage in the gossip. They want you to engage in the meaningless small talk, or downright engage in ideological subterfuge that is based in the deception of those who have fallen victim to the mind control of the hive mind virus. A lot of the verbiage that comes out of people's mouth is really just auditory mind virus phenomena. And if you're like me and you're tired of listening to people talk shit to one another, or to kiss and tell, or talk about meaningless current events, or talk about all of the auditory mind virus phenomena, which is based upon the psychological warfare that they have made to believe is true, when really it is deception, is it any wonder why I elect not to leave my fucking house? And whenever I'm forced to do so, it is so dreadful, because people just talk because they love to hear the sound of their own voice. And unfortunately, because apparently we are gregarious animals, unless you're extremely introverted like myself, most people, they get penalized by the lack of stimulation and the lack of salience that is accompanied with being in your hermitage and being in a space that is ultimately wholesome, because it lacks interlocutor human activity. We start to feel these sensations like loneliness, and we feel a longing to socially interact. And what I believe loneliness, insofar as wanting to interact with people, or even the loneliness that wants you to involve yourself in a sexual romantic relationship, all of that type of loneliness is really just the Matrix trying to sabotage your spiritual embetterment by penalizing you with negative emotions to try to get you to get emotionally involved in the activities of this hellscape. Because we find ourselves that when we are alone, even though we might be bored, at least we are not agitated, lest by our own thoughts. But we're not agitated when it comes to the mental irritation that people's poisonous emotional outpourings of their bullshit verbiage brings us. So I've come to realize that when it comes to the loneliness and the boredom, that is a far better condition than victimizing yourselves to the inferiority, which is the profanity of the multitude. When you stoop down to their level, you are assuming a position of equality with that which is beneath you. And I'm not necessarily talking about that in like a narcissistic way, like humankind is beneath you because you are so much better than them. I'm mostly referring to the linguistic content that comes out of their mouth that you are thereby entertaining, and that you are actively participating in by giving contribution thereto. I have come to realize that loneliness and boredom, even though it can be uncomfortable at times, it is far better for your sanity and for your peace to try to make the best of making yourself your best friend and soliloquizing. You know, the word soliloquize means talking to oneself. And psychologists will tell you that that's a sign of insanity, but Schopenhauer said that to soliloquize is actually a sign of genius. Some of the most meaningful conversations that I've ever had, where I have received the maximum benefit, is actually me pacing around in my own abode, having a full-blown Platonic dialogue with myself. I'm serious, man. If you were to astral project and spy on me without my knowledge, you would see me spending a good portion of my time talking to myself, and or going into deep mental philosophical contemplation interiorly, and sometimes it gets brought out exteriorly by soliloquizing, but you know, that is meaningful to me. I have learned to make myself my own best friend because I can always rely on my own good company, and so can you. Okay? And here's the thing. To watch a YouTube video like this, even though this isn't a verbal exchange between you and I, it is a valuable form of human contact. Right now, even if you are alone, and you're listening to the sound of my voice, and you're getting value from what I'm saying, this is valuable human contact. Valuable human contact comes in the form of reading books by people who are at a level of genius conscientiousness where even if they're dead, the lucidity that they have outpoured onto those pages, that is a valid form of human contact. Watching YouTube videos that is meaningful and not brain rot is a valuable form of human contact, even though it is not social interaction per se. And that way you don't lose your mind. Because, yeah, you need human contact, but guess what? You're getting human contact right now by listening to the sound of my voice. And hopefully, by you so doing, even though you struggle in your feelings of loneliness, I hope I have provided you some feelings of camaraderie. And throughout my videos, I hope I have provided you a feeling of accompaniment and visitation with my presence, and it has provided you with some modicum of comfort.